Hi, this is Steven from Adventurers Dispatch, where I try to bring you all the news and content about LARP that I can. And today I decided to do something a little different. I decided to bring you with me to the park to talk to you a little bit about my own journey with LARP. Firstly, let's talk about a little bit what LARP is. Live action role playing is what it stands for. And what happens is that you're assigned a character, and with that character, for a few days, you enter into a world that's imagined and doesn't exist, but you go through all the experiences that that character has. It's almost like being in a movie, if you can imagine that, where you're the lead character and the audience is following you along in your head, or in a role-playing game. The thing about most LARP is there's really no winners or losers. You don't wind up coming ahead or winning in the end like a hero in a movie would or a hero in a role-playing game would. You're really there to go through the experience and to maybe find out a little bit about yourself along the way. So I'm relatively new to LARPing. I just got into LARP about 3 years ago. There was something called the Star Wars Starcruiser at Disney World. And this was something that was based on the world of Star Wars. And you would go and you would check into a space cruiser in outer space, and you would play out a character over the course of a weekend. It was a little bit of immersive theater, a little bit of LARP. Immersive theater in the way that there were actual sort of plot points that you and NPCs that or non-player characters, as they're called, that you had to interact with. So they were actors, and they had goals that they were trying to get the players in the game to play. And so you would interact with them, but it was also like LARP because you got to develop a character and you got to live those moments and you got to go through the weekend as your character and the emotions that came up. It was incredibly powerful and it was incredibly wonderful if you gave yourself over to the experience and you went with an open mind. You had a blast. It was amazing. I met tons of great people there, and some of those people invited me to a full-blown LARP a few months later. So I joined them at this LARP. It was called Muscatonic University by Chaos League, and it was based on the writings of Lovecraft, and it took place at the university that Lovecraft wrote about in a lot of his horror stories. It was quite different than the Halcyon Starcruiser, but I immediately fell in love with it. And again, it was developing a character and living through a weekend where amazing things were happening all around you. It was much more open. Oops. Sorry, I had to move because they started some lawn work in back of me. So let me see if I can find another nice quiet place. It's a gorgeous day today in New York City. And this is Stuyvesant Park. This is where I live, a block away from where I live. It's an amazing park, as you can see. A beautiful sort of oasis in the middle of a bunch of buildings. So maybe I'll just sit here for right now. So yes, so this Muscatonic University that I went to, thrown by the producers Chaos League, which was a production group out of Italy who ran a lot of international LARPs. And they were throwing this LARP in Pennsylvania. And it had gotten, they had thrown it before in Europe to rave reviews. So it was an amazing weekend and essentially hooked me. From there I was all in, man. So when I was talking to people, I met the producer of that LARP, and I asked him, I said, well, what should I be doing next? And he said that they were running a LARP called Eclipse at the end of the year, and they had an extra space open. So I jumped on it, and I told them, yes, sign me up. And without really knowing too much about it at all. And it turned out to be a a sci-fi themed LARP that took place in an actual movie studio outside of Krakow. And the movie studio had been made specifically for sci-fi films or TV. So we're talking about a series of like geodesic domes that had different sort of like, connected by air shaft ways that the doors would open and shut as you went through them. And it was just sort of out of this world architecture. It was beautiful, beautiful space. And essentially once we checked in for the weekend, we then, as it turned out, didn't leave for a couple days. We did get some hotel space. So at the end of the day, we would be shuttled back and forth to the hotel. We didn't have to stay in the movie studios. Although that would have, I think there were some people who actually did. And that would have been cool. But essentially, you got this feeling of being in this space environment for a good 72 hours. And within that, a plot played out, and there were different connections with different people, and it was a far more emotional than I ever thought it was going to be. On that journey, I had asked a couple people, well, what's another LARP or two for me to get involved with? And a lot of people mentioned Conscience, which is a Westworld-based LARP that takes place in a whole sort of movie set that they built for Western TV shows and movies. And then they also mentioned some people I talked to, Adventurers Academy. So when looking for things this year, I decided to do Adventurers Academy. I was within the sign-up range for that. Oh, sirens. Sorry about that. So I was within the sign-up range for Adventures, Life in the City, Adventurers Academy. So I signed up for that. And then I was too late for the sign up for Conscience, though I put myself on a waiting list, which was smart because it turned out that if I could have done it, the waiting list for Conscience was constantly turning over, and there's always roles available that you could apply for. It was almost like an acting casting. You know, if you were interested in a role, they would sort of take a look at what you were looking for and try to pair you up correctly, it sounds like. But because of timing issues, I was unable to do that. But I did find something for January, which was sort of the European sister to Conscience, which is called In Conscience. And instead of being a Western themed event, it is a theme to the Three Musketeers. So, a third of the players are guests at this amazing sort of park where you assume a character as somebody living in the 1600s, and then another third of the people are essentially the same idea, that they're characters within this world, within the Three Musketeers world, but they're robots, cybernetics. And then there's another third of players who run the park and sustain the event for everybody else who's there. So I'm doing that in January, and that takes place in Cadiz, Spain, which is going to be very exciting. Adventurers Academy, which is in November, is taking place in a castle, Szkoła Castle in Poland. And we get to spend a couple nights in the castle. So that's going to be fun too. Yeah, so that's essentially how I got into LARP. I mean, I was an actor for years, so I find that really helps me out in terms of developing a character, improvising with other people, working with scripted moments, all of those things that take place during a LARP. Oh geez, I put this music in the background here. I don't know if you can hear that. I hope it isn't copyright. La da 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 da. There you go. Now it's not. There's a couple of different types of LARP, and so far I've been attracted to the blockbuster LARPs, which are huge sets, very grand plots, usually about 100 different characters playing the game at one time, large sort of worlds that are built. Yeah, so the first one, Miskatonic University, took place at Bryn Mawr College in Pennsylvania, and they had rented out, Chaos League had rented out several buildings So we had a lot of the campus that we could run around at, and we stayed on campus, and it took place in the 1920s at a university, so it was the perfect atmosphere for that. And then of course I've described to you Eclipse, which was unbelievable. And then just what I've talked about in terms of going to Cadiz, Spain, that's going to be in a castle, Shoha Castle in Poland for Adventures Academy. And then I'm also doing one next month called, again with Chaos League, called Bunker 101, which is supposed to be a sort of, I don't know if you're familiar with the TV show or role-playing game Fallout, but it's 1950s, nuclear holocaust. We're the last bunker existing, and it's 100 years since, and it's essentially about the workings of the small town that has developed within this bunker. And when I say bunker, I actually mean bunker. I'm going to be in Rome in a bunker that's underneath Rome, and we get sealed in there, and God knows if I'm ever going to come out. I mean, I am out, but you know, might just be stuck in there forever. So besides the blockbuster LARPs that I've been involved with, there's also what's known as parlor LARPs, which are a smaller, more intimate type of LARP. Usually less people, a more intimate group, relationships matter more. Well, I don't want to say more, but they're more intense, and the plots aren't as grand. It's sometimes a good way to try out LARPing to see if you enjoy it. And then there's what's known as buffer LARPs, which are sometimes really huge cast of characters, a sort of camping LARP. And they're called buffer LARPs because you're having these grand battles or individual battles, but the weapons you're using are safe to use. They're made of different materials that are safe to swing and to hit with. And usually things are going in slower motion. If they're not, the weapons are all choreographed beforehand between players. Yeah, so those are the major 3 types of LARP: buffer, parlor, blockbuster. And within those types of LARPs, there's many different varieties. Then we get into the world of immersive theater. And it's, you know, it's starting to bleed over LARP into immersive theater into LARP, as we saw with Halcyon. I hope a lot of you out there got to experience that. I guess I just wanted to take this time just to say hello. Again, I'm Steven from Adventures Dispatch. And I guess I should tell you a little bit about this channel and why I wanted to do this. As I said, when I was in Europe last year and I was looking for LARPs to do, I had to rely on the suggestions of other people. Before that, I was going online, and there were certain LARPs that were suggested or that were open for registration, but I really didn't know too much about it, and I had a hard time understanding what was going on. So the personal recommendations from people that I met during my own LARPing really helped me out to find the LARPs that I'm doing this year. But I did notice that there was no real clearinghouse of a place that would dedicate itself to just saying, you know, what LARPs there are out there, to build a community where you could ask questions like, how do I begin this? What's the best way to go about it? This is the LARP that I'm doing. I mean, that's really my goal, is to create a sort of community where no questions are dumb, where everybody gets to ask about this amazing entertainment. Is entertainment too slight of a word? These entertainment venues and experiences. I want more people to get involved in this. I mean, I could foresee a future where this is where we're moving as a society in terms of entertainment. A friend of mine once said, you know, adults need play. And I really believe that. I believe that play can help us to understand each other by experiencing what other people go through. So anyway, on this beautiful weekend day here in New York City, I just wanted to say hello and welcome to my little bit of my little corner of YouTube, and I hope you can join me and subscribe to the channel and give this video a like if you can. Thanks so much.